Schönen guten Morgen, herzlich willkommen im Architekturzentrum Wien zu unserem Symposium Gemeinsam Haushalten. A warm welcome to all our guests, especially to all our international and local speakers and chairs. Glad to have you with us today. Common household, living, eating and caring in the city. The title of our symposium can be read on different scales, from the scarcity of resources on a planetary level to very local ways of living together. In our exhibition and publication, Critical Care, Architecture and Urbanism for a Broken Planet, Elke Krasny and I explored several years ago how an ethics of care could change planning and building at all levels, so that an exhausted planet can continue to provide living conditions for both humans and all other species. In today's symposium, we focus on the relationship between food and housing in the city. How can this issue make its way from a rather contested topic to new ideas for a productive coexistence? A question that is highly relevant for a rapidly growing city like Vienna. That's why I'm particularly pleased that with this symposium we continue our cooperation with the city of Vienna, namely with Kurt Hofstetter and Amila Serbegovic from the Department of Strategic Projects and International Affairs. Lene Benz, who curated the symposium on behalf of the AZW, will explain the various topics in a moment, therefore I can be brief. But let me take this opportunity to invite you to visit our current exhibitions, especially the positions of the youngest generation of architects, titled Back and Forth Cost Estimates, Breastfeeding and Turnaround Strategies. So in German, zwischen Kostenschätzung, Muttermilch und Bauwende. You will find various reflections on commoning and care there, as you will in our permanent exhibition, Hot Questions, Cold Storage. And then next door, of course, our current exhibition, Holland Calling, certainly also worth a visit. I would like to express my thanks to Lene Benz for conceptualizing and organizing this conference and to the team of the AZW for supporting her. A big thanks goes to Kurt and Amila for this inspiring cooperation, for this ongoing cooperation, and to the city of Vienna for its support. I'm looking forward to a packed day filled with great presentations and discussions, and would now like to welcome Kurt on stage. Have a nice day.
Good morning. Thank you, Angelika. As I'm working in the field of housing, I've been asked what has the production of food to do with housing? And this question unveils the fact that in our functionally divided world, we have become very far removed from these interrelationships and from historical development. For most of the time in human history, it was not even possible to separate these areas. The production of food, its preparation, cooking, eating, were self-evident aspects of settling, of housing, of living. Only cooking and eating have remained, and sometimes only eating. Even the suburban settlements, the so-called Stadtransiedlungen in Vienna of the interwar period, provided enough space to allow growing food on their own land as part of the collective food production in the city. Today we are reclaiming some of that through activities like urban gardening. Yet many of us no longer have the knowledge of what fruits and what vegetables are ready to harvest at what time in the year, which of them are even produced locally, and certainly we do not know, and maybe we do not care, about the carbon footprint of those products that are available all year round. But we talk a lot about making housing affordable for everyone. And at the same time, especially in the last 40 years, where that development has gotten completely out of hand, we are ignoring that for centuries we have already been living at the expense of others and at the expense of the planet. The planet itself might not care too much, it's so worse, and if necessary it will be able to recover from the annoying disease called Homo sapiens. But we as human beings should be highly concerned about maintaining the living conditions on this planet in such a way that they can guarantee our continued existence in the future. 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries that are decisive for this continued existence in the future have already been exceeded. Of course, the amount of CO2 production, which we are discussing a lot, but most clearly the genetic integrity of the biosphere. Therefore, we decided to focus today's symposium with the AZW and the Housing Department of the City of Vienna on common household, on living, eating, and of caring in the city. Thank you again, Angelika and Lena Benz and the team of AZW for curating this symposium, which is very interesting, and for opening the doors to projects and activities that might inspire us for our own future activities. Thank you very much.
Living is work, whether it is about eating, caring for oneself and others, or looking after the space. Where does food come from? How sustainable is it? And how fairly is domestic labor distributed? How is the future household organized, and what alternative models are there in architecture and urban planning? These and other questions will be discussed at today's symposium. It is becoming increasingly clear that the way we live and eat is crossing planetary boundaries and consuming more land, water, and resources than is good for the environment. Food production and consumption have been moving immensely away from personal homes. By the time food reaches our table, it has usually passed through a global logistic and production chain, especially in cities. Therefore, current research suggests that food supply should be reintegrated into the urban fabric. How this can succeed and what it takes to do so will be discussed in the morning's first panel between field and city food spaces in residential neighborhoods. After the lunch break, the second panel at one table will follow, focusing on communal eating as an eco-social living practice, which is gaining more and more relevance. It can not only satisfy physically, but also promote social interaction. It is environmentally sustainable and can have a positive impact on mental and physical health. Around this topic area, this panel gathers examples from Germany, Peru, and Switzerland. Directly linked to the preparation of food is domestic labor, which is still largely managed by women and happens in living spaces, which further manifests this inequality. The third panel, Living is Work, presents and discusses different strategies and practices for distributing space and care work in housing from the perspective of architecture, research, and gender-responsive planning. Each of the 3 panels will conclude with a roundtable discussion in which representatives from the municipality or social service will put the previous presentations into the Viennese context. At 6:30, we will welcome as keynote speaker the renowned architect Ana Puigana from Mayo Architects in Barcelona, who since the beginning of this year holds the new professorship for architecture and care at the ETH Zurich. In her research, Kitchenless City, she analyzed the role of urban kitchens. These, used by the community, and serve as a supplement to the private kitchen, which at the same time has increasingly faded into the background. Ana Puigana describes them as radical systems, as they blur established boundaries between private and public, female and male, as well as work and domestic labor. These kitchens are also sites for the neighborhood and directly linked to municipal institutions. More about that we will hear in tonight's keynote lecture. Before we start, I would like to say a few more words about the people on and behind stage. At today's event, I'm very pleased to present the symposium together with my colleagues from the TU Wien, Bernhard Kreis and Dorothee Huber, who will chair the first 2 panels. Dorothee Huber is university assistant at the Institute of Urban Design and has previously worked for many years as architect and researcher in Austria, Mexico, and South Africa. Until 2021, she was part of the Europan Austria team. Her work focuses on urban development, urban research, and participatory processes, in particular on phenomena of mixed use and production in the city. Bernhard Kreis is an architect and researcher based at the Department of Housing and Design. Her work is situated in a transdisciplinary research field between architecture, housing, and visual culture. For her work at the Arch Plus issue Wien, das Ende des Wohnbaus als Typologie, she was awarded with the Bruno Kreisky Prize in 2022. And as co-founder of the feminist collective Claiming Spaces, she deals with questions of queer feminist intersectional knowledge production in architectural education. Bernadette and Dorothy, thank you very much for your support today, and I'm very delighted to host with you together the event. I also want to thank the AZW team, especially Oliver Schmid, Christian Schwarz, Daniela Zistler, Maria Falkner, Ditlinde Neubert, and the teams around them for the technical support, catering, and the general setup. And especially a special thank to the director of the AZW, Angelika Fitz, for the always supportive cooperation. Thank you all very much, and I'm handing over now to Dorothee Huber to open the first panel.
Thank you, Lene, for the introduction, and thank you and the AZW for asking me to moderate this panel. I'm really honored. Good morning to everybody in this room on my behalf. The panel Between Field and City, Food Spaces in the Residential Quarter discusses, as Lene has just mentioned, the reintegration of food production and food supply in the urban fabric. We will start our panel with the input from Jago van Bergen. He will be introducing to us the work of his office, Van Bergen Kolpa Architecten, a practice which has specialized on architecture for food. Their project, Agrotopia, was built in 2021 in the city of Roeselare in Belgium and is Europe's largest rooftop greenhouse and research center for urban food production built atop of an existing building. Then we switch to another example of sustainable food production in cities. The second input will be about the research project and living lab Roof Water Farm, held by the project's co-founders Grit Bürgow and Anja Steglich, both from the Stadtmanufaktur Berlin, a living lab platform from the TU Berlin. The Roof Water Farm understands water as a resource and uses wastewater from the surrounding neighborhood to produce processed water and fresh food, and all of this right in the center of Berlin. Last but not least, Vanessa Giolai and Daniel Löschenbrand will present the research project Food Atlas Vienna on food spaces and food systems in the city of Vienna. In 3 phases, they will explain how they use different methods from community mapping to citizen science to gain a data collection. There will be also insights in the ongoing evaluation phase. Additionally, they will show some examples of how food still nowadays shapes the city of Vienna. And one of these case studies, the Zukunftshof Wien, will be presented by one of its initiators himself, Andreas Gugumuck. After the inputs, we will have a panel discussion with Bernhard Steger, head of urban district planning and zoning of the city of Vienna, as an additional guest to the round of experts. Good, let's start with our first guest and speaker, Jago van Bergen. Jago van Bergen is a Dutch architect and one of the 2 directors of Van Bergen Kolpa Architects, which he founded with Evert Kolper in the year 2000. The office works internationally with clients, stakeholders, and innovators who aspire to create sustainable buildings and cities, both now and in the future. New architecture for circular and urban food production is the expertise of the office. The work of Van Bergen Kolper has gained worldwide appreciation through numerous exhibition, publication, and has received various awards. Besides all of this, Jago van Bergen also teaches and sets up research projects, of course, on architecture for food, together with leading horticulture companies and the academic world. So far from my side, welcome, Jago.
There's a pointer? Yes. Which one is the pointer? That one is the pointer. Okay. Yeah. You can also switch. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the overwhelming introduction, Dorothee. And thank you for the invitation, Lena, and the Architectuurcentrum, Angelinka. I think the theme is right on the spot, and it made me very happy to come here today. I see there's some time, a small half hour, which I want to use to indeed show you at the end of my presentation the Agrotopia project. But I also thought to bring some recent work of the office to steer the discussion a bit of today, because let's say there's not one type of solution to integrate food into the city, I think. But first, let me tell a very boring slide bit that you know a little bit what I'm doing here, or why I'm standing here. I established my office in 2000 together with Evert Kolpa in Rotterdam. We're specialized in architecture for food, as Dorothee mentioned, but also in architecture for a living. So housing is also a very big topic within our office. We run a full-service agency, so from first program of demands and studies to the end of the delivery. We're completely involved in the whole process. We run an international portfolio, so worldwide, and we work with different types of organizations, from governmental to commercial clients. Over the, let's say, past more than 20 years, we accumulated around 200,000 square meters of agricultural space, so to speak, and around more than 2,000 houses that we realized, designed and built. And indeed, a bit of a recognition, especially Agrotopia recently, where we got awarded the World Architecture Prize for its, well, quite a good support that we're on the right track. Actually, we love the city. This is where we are situated. Our office is somewhere here, in the middle of the center of Rotterdam. We live here, we work here, we raise our children here. And we eat, of course. But we also are very much like the countryside. So again, Rotterdam, but then, let's say, surrounded by an immense, diverse type of food landscapes, which is the regular open field agriculture for dairy production. And of course, very important, the horticultural glasshouse area around it, 5,000 hectares, which is, let's say, the cradle of horticulture worldwide. All the knowledge, but also the production takes place here. It's like a big turnstile for the whole of the world. Most also because of the harbor of Rotterdam, where a huge amount of influx of food from foreign countries is being re-exported, let's say, to other countries again. So you can imagine this is a huge food machine with a lot of knowledge. And basically what we do in the office is that the traditional, let's say, for an architect, knowledge fields of urban design, landscape design and architecture comes together in our office, combined with different fields of agriculture. We do this a lot with the University of Wageningen, but more and more also with all the entrepreneurs, let's say, within this Greenport area that our office is situated in. So let's say both, let's say, parties from the traditional real estate development, municipalities, etc., and housing corporations, but also, and that makes us a bit different from the, let's say, food sector. And I give you a couple of examples that are from a while ago. This project we delivered in 2011, where, let's say, housing and food production by the community itself was really integrated into the city in this former garden city of Hoogvliet, south of the Netherlands, where food production takes place in the collective realm in terms of fruit and vertical fruit and blossom vegetation that is chosen by the community and also maintained by the community. More recently, this tower is now under construction in the city center of Rotterdam. It's quite a particular tower because it stacks single family houses of 3 floors. So this is not your regular apartment, but it's a house. For instance, as you know, it's row housing, Dutch row housing with in-between houses, corner houses, and accessed by an internal street every 3 floors, because the house has 3 floors. But also this tower in the collective areas surrounding the building on the different gardens around the houses. So here you see a corner house. Will be planted with trees, nut and berry trees and fruit trees. So this is in a relaxed, let's say, way, in a relaxed setting that you can live here and are surrounded by food. But if you talk about, let's say, serious food production, that's sort of the main topic that we're also going to address today. There's a few choices, let's say a few techniques at the moment, but also in the future that we have to talk about. Mainly, we could say we're fed by open field agriculture, a bit of greenhouse horticulture, and recently more and more vertical farming. And these are interesting, let's say, directions that we have to talk about, because in the introduction it was already mentioned that we have a bit of a problem with our planet. And let's say these figures say for me a lot about it. So we get fed by a system which takes a huge amount of space and resources of our planet. And because of the density of production, it also is needed to be, let's say, harnessed with pesticides. And it's transported all over the world. So let's say the figures are accordingly. If we look to a more controlled environment type of agriculture, we can reduce, let's say, the use of a lot of resources that we have on our planet. Since it is, let's say, controlled, we can, let's say, go back to almost 20% of our land use and a yield that is almost 10 times as high with very little water and also fewer pesticides. And transportation, because horticulture in greenhouses can be let's say, closer to the city, for instance, like Aquatopia, even on the roof. Transportation also dramatically reduces, can be reduced by almost a half. A new type of sport in the agriculture is vertical farming. It's a very young type of farming, which is very much in the process of development since the last 5 to 10 years, but mainly the last 10 years. Which even reduces the amount of resources and the use of it even more dramatically, and the yields are going even more up. There's one thing, that is the energy, because we recreate daylight with LED lights in these kind of vertical structures. That's a very big thing to think about, but I'll show you later. If you take, besides the energy reduction of these LED lights, if you take into account, let's say, new strategies of reusing the residual heat, we come a lot further. And of course, this is in the heart of the city, can be built in anywhere in modules, so transportation is almost nothing. It could be somewhere here in this building, for instance. So let's say that's, well, the horizontal solutions, we know this system, which is widely spread across the globe. And if we talk about more urban solution, then vertical farming is more and more into development into the cities itself. And within this gamma of vertical farming, there's a few solutions. And you could talk about a daylight solution, which is a kind of hybrid where you stack the vertical, the production vertically, of course, but still are making use of daylight. It's a kind of hybrid, a combination, or completely daylightless, like the aero farms in the USA. We developed a kind of modular system, so we're able actually to take the different parts of this vertical farm production, the production itself, but also the handling and the technique behind it, into models so you can condense it even more and stack it from, let's say, horizontal solutions to vertical solutions. And these kind of buildings also, of course, ask for a new kind of image in the city. This is a standalone. It could be indeed within the city, but starts to obey the rules of the city, like an open plinth, which is accessible and where you can see part of the production. And of course, a middle part of the building that sort of communicates its new use, but also it needs, in this case, of course, a lot of electricity by a sort of skirt of photovoltaic cells and a proud crown that, let's say, radiates the function on a higher level. But it could also be very well integrated within existing buildings. This is a project for the city of Antwerp, where an abandoned grain silo, so a former food building with vertical shafts, will be let's say, purposed to vertical farming inside the vertical shafts and with a roof attic where different forms of controlled agriculture come together and are publicly accessible. Let's say, as I mentioned already, vertical farming has a lot of electricity use. The key is if you, let's say, start to think about it in a, let's say, connected way, so in a more circular way, because all types of agriculture use, let's say, certain forms of energy and water. But let's say, as my speaker after me will also talk about more probably the circular aspects of water, so you can think also of energy. And the same goes for vertical farming. If we know how to reuse that residual heat that comes for vertical farming, I will talk to you through this with some slides of images as well. Then you could balance it out by, let's say, 5 square meters of production of vertical farming that feeds around 4 persons. You could use it for residual heat for a regular apartment of around 80 square meters. So this is the kind of thing we're now doing with the TU Delft also and the University of Wageningen to modelize again. Here you see in the heart of the diagram the production with besides it the technical spaces that you need and the processing, and model that and see how you can fit it regular housing developments that you have now. So in the dark spaces which you can quite efficiently extend a little bit without having extra facades, you can, let's say, incorporate a system, for instance in a tower, with a very slim and slender solution in the elevator shafts, with somewhere halfway, of course, the handling space to corridor types where you have a bit more of a generous position for food production, right in the middle, in the heart, or at a regular urban block with family houses, maybe even connected to a market. And as you could see in the figures, and as I just mentioned, it's not only sufficient for the apartment itself, there's even left over heat and, of course, more food production. So you could start to think also this on an urban scale. So these collection of around 10 buildings could feed a neighborhood, let's say, and heat it at the same time. An example of how we bring this into practice is this building that we realized in the city of Hangshui in China, south of Beijing, where we, let's say, integrated a couple of different types of agriculture on the ground floor, vertical farming, with some parts which are visible, and in the top, rooftop farming, and in between a layer of offices that use indeed this residual heat, but also are, let's say, an office floor where all the suppliers and the partners in the horticultural sector are prominently present, where, let's say, all the meetings, etc., take place. In these kind of buildings, we always look for, let's say, spaces that put food right in the heart of the public realm. So this is a generous entrance space where food production can be seen and acts as a public, let's say, a meeting point around food. And this is some snapshots from last April, when I was there to see how the building is progressing. So it's not in function yet. That will be done by the end of the year. But you get a bit of an impression of what, let's say, also the new type of architecture can, let's say, be when you talk about food in the city. This is a project for the city of Beijing, and actually for the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Science. We made the entrance building there, which is also, let's say, accumulation of different types of food production within one building, which also forms an entrance of the campus. And the other, let's say, greenhouse pilot buildings on the campus. So you have a generous space again, where you are surrounded by different food production, in this case, around 20 layers of vertical farming, but on the 3 floors around it, all kinds of worlds where different kind of food from, let's say, nuts and berry trees to intense vertical farming to horticulture on the roof for fruity vegetables, etc. And of course, we're talking about a new type of agriculture. You can imagine, let's say, that this is, let's say, a new or kind of inviting gesture of the Chinese Academy of Agriculture towards the future and the people that want to engage with this kind of new future. And they're also having kind of idea about what they're doing, because they're not making only the building, but placing it immediately with their anniversary cake, if we talk about food, let's say next to other icons of the city. And I think this is a, a very conscious decision, but also a very self-awareness that you can compete with the Bird's Nest and the OME CCTV building in its importance for the city. As Dorothee mentioned, the largest greenhouse of Europe, I think that's one of the aspects. Agrotopia has many more. It's indeed a center for research into urban food production. That means that all parties need to be involved here. So it's not only scientists who are researching, but it's also the growers and the logistical, let's say, partners in the food production chain. And it's, of course, the new generation, the wider public, and the younger generation that is interested in both nature, food, and, let's say, what possible profession you could have in the future. The building is situated in the city of Roeselare, close to the larger, maybe well-known city of Lille in France. It's situated along the ring road of that city, so it's well accessible, because indeed food as close as you can get to the city still needs some transportation. It's also positioned right on top of the vegetable and fruit auction of the city of Roeselare, which has a wide spread up till Germany and France. The Reo veiling. As you can see, let's say, the building is situated in the city, but it's also very much connected in all kinds of different ways with the city. So, for instance, this greenhouse is heated by the residual heat of the waste incinerator of the city. We're trying to reuse nutrients of the sewage water. We're talking even about carbon oxide to use, which is a very complicated, by the way, undertaking. And of course, in return, we let's say, give new food to the city. So we use the waste of the city to produce new food. The building itself is a very proud building. It celebrates its presence in the city. We used the Stenlo-Venlo greenhouse type, which is, let's say, a very modern greenhouse type, which has been developed over the last 20, 30 years to a certain amount of perfection. And we sort of modeled it a little bit on 2 points where it meets the where it meets the ring road and the entrance. So this is the head and the tail, while the body, let's say, has all the different research compartments. So this is the head. Facing ring road with a vertical horticulture solution built on top of the water provision. So these are the water tanks of the rainwater that is captured from the roof. And the till, which is the entrance of the building, a big stair going up, 10 meters high, and let's say introduces you into the world of horticulture of the future on rooftops. The building is, since it opened in 2021, sort of daily fully booked. With, for instance, school kids classes that run up the stairs, so we made an extra wide stair to, let's say, reach this new level of public space, which is surrounded by all kinds of facilities, like here you run up, offices, meeting, small restaurant, etc. So let's say where all these people that are involved with this project can meet. The body of the building is 25 different compartments for leafy vegetables and fruity vegetables, surrounded by this wide space, a public corridor, technical spaces, and the vertical farming head. And let's say this public space is widely used since its opening for all kinds of purposes, education, etc., touring. Also the King of Belgium wanted to have a peek on what is going on. And then you need to make a building that is not only suitable for plants, but also for people. So let's say under one roof, people and plants go very well together in this building, because we made different climate zones, not only for plants, humid and warm climate, but also for people. Let's say where the education, for instance, and meeting take place. And in between these two climates, we have a buffer climate that is, let's say, for the sustainable and circular approach of the energy, very good, but also you can feel the different seasons there in between summer and winter. And it's, let's say, the space where you can have a peek into what is happening, not with full glass, so not only on top of the, let's say, vegetable production itself, but also underneath, because that's very important. All this type of agriculture is soilless, so it's, let's say, purely run on water and nutrients, and doesn't stick into the ground, let's say, anymore, but is a fully high-tech solution for food production. It's built on top of an existing warehouse, and therefore we were in the opportunity to level the roof, put a lot of infrastructure underneath it, which is good for the temperature of the water so it doesn't get too hot. But it also, let's say, gives the opportunity to make a fully recirculating system. No drop of water is being, let's say, spilled in this complex. You can see leafy vegetables like lettuce on automated systems. You can see, in this case, fruity vegetable, cucumbers and bell peppers, and tomatoes. And it's not without any reason that you see a lot of young people running around on our pictures, because that's the new generation of urban farmers. They get attracted to this kind of environment because they see that there's a lot happening and that there's a new kind of future taking place here. In, let's say, the areas that you just saw, but also in these new kind of spaces, this vertical greenhouse, which could be let's say, example of how we're going to grow food vertically in the future of the city. So it has one side of daylight and the other side is more closed. And now the University of Ghent is inventing this machine, adapting it to this space, 12 meter high. So an automated system, let's say, and this could be, let's say, the kind of space, the buffer space around office buildings or future residential buildings where you can, let's say, grow food directly in your vicinity of apartments and other functions in the city. Of course, it's innovative in its, let's say, complexity of arranging different programs together, but also in the construction. We literally had to build on top of an existing concrete warehouse with a steel construction and a glass cover. So the first, let's say, normal foundation you pour in the ground, here we had to do it at 10 meters high. And we also had to work around this building because it was already in use. So we had to work with, let's say, very flexible modes of logistical transportation, very lightweight structure, etc. And also, let's say, in the design of the building, we needed to innovate because of its transparency. Let's say you want to have as much daylight as possible in it, but also to make the building transparent to the city. That's what a new type of building for food production, I think, demands of out of the public realm, that it shows what it does. So that means a lot of integration of the regular things, heating and screenings, of course, inside, let's say, the facade solution. And let's say we took the roof even over the facade on both sides. And this guarantees that when the sun is reflecting on one side, you can peek into from the other side unobstructed, but also that the screens, when they're lowered, which is quite often happening in greenhouses, we splitted the screens. So one side, for instance, to the morning sun is lowered, and then still you can look from the west side inside the building. So throughout the day we guarantee transparency, even when you shade it from the sun. But also at night, I think it takes a bit more care about buildings that are for food production, that you design even the light, because the city doesn't sleep. So even there we think that, let's say, food and production and buildings and the design of it in the public realm can create new topologies, let's say, that create an, let's say, integrated place for food in our residential neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very inspiring presentation. Now I'm pleased to introduce the next two speakers. Bürgow is an urban and a landscape designer with background in food and biotechnology, ecological engineering and cradle-to-cradle design. She's co-founder of Architectura Studios for regenerative landscapes and of Roof Water Farm. Currently, she's working in the Presidium of the TU Berlin at Stadtmanufaktur Reallabor platform and is part of the staff unit Science and Society. In strategic project, she develops and leads living labs on water-sensitive, edible and climate-positive neighborhood and campus developments, and is involved in student prototype designs in the field of lightweight farming, hydroponics, innovative research participation and the cooperative operation in urban space. Anja Steglich is an urban landscape designer and co-founder of Roof Water Farm. Her field of work are participation in space and landscape, perception and communication of space and landscape, water-sensitive urban design, circular economy, and building integrated agriculture, public space and scenography. She works as well in the Presidium of the TU Berlin and develops the Stadtmanufaktur as an interface for the diverse and active collaborations between science and urban society, and as a real laboratory center of the TU Berlin. Themes of climate change, blue-green infrastructures and collaborations between art and science are the focus of her design work. And one additional point I want to add to her CV, because so many people in the last days have mentioned it to me. Anja Steglich was also guest professor or like leave representation at the school department of the TU Wien for 1.5 years. I would like to welcome you on stage.
Thank you so much for this introduction, and thank you so much for that invitation. I'm quite happy to be back I'm Anja Steglich, so it's the first time that I'm back in Vienna since 2013. Okay.
My name is Bürgow, and I'm also happy that we have the opportunity to be here, and want to say thank you to all the to Lena and to Dorothee and all the organizing team from the TU Wien. And yeah, we are happy to share some of our projects.
Yeah. So let's start directly. I think it's a good addition to your presentation. We will talk about actually a project which we developed together when I left Vienna, so that's kind of a circle closing right now, the roof water farm. And I will start with a structure where the roof water farm is located now, just to explain you what a position of the Technical University of Berlin is to work with living labs, because I think it's a quite important question for the panel when we discuss together what kind of work we need at that interface. So it's both the roof water farm and the Stadtmanufaktur. And what we develop now together with the roof water farm is the living lab platform Stadtmanufaktur. So the Technical University in Berlin decided to develop actually a top-down structure to guide and to participate in transformation processes within Berlin. And the city itself, we were discussing that quite a lot when I was here in Vienna, actually is a quite fast changing city. So what I think we have is transformation, Erfahrung, experience. And a lot of scientists there do transformative research, and we are in a phase where we need that interface between science and urban development. So what we offer there actually to the society is a long-term partnership beside research projects and architectural projects to have a look and to evaluate that transformation processes. And actually we offer a platform for co-production from the university side. It's quite, I think, important that this platform is a neutral sponsorship within the city itself, so it's beside all those power questions we have in city development. It's really about research and topics and developing topics, and it's open for all actors, and it's transdisciplinary. So I think the topic we talk about, food within the city, is blurring every discipline, every borders we know, and it's really about developing that knowledge in between the different disciplines. So that's why the Stadtmanufaktur is standing for that. Here you can see that we do much more than that. We have different transformation topics. So the roof water farm is one of the living labs of the platform. It's a lot about energy, mobility, and all those topics. And we have a regional perspective. We just focus Berlin, and we have an international platform partnering international projects, the Urban Living Lab Center. And we start with, or we will show with the roof water farm, that we have strategic projects which actually develop a long-term perspective, and we have small projects. So it's a mixture of different formats within transdisciplinarity processes. And the roof water farm actually can explain a lot of challenges within the living lab work. So this we will show later on. From that point, I hand over to Grit.
Thank you. And now I think we want to tell the story of the roof water farm project. Actually, we started, as you see, not here on this slide, but we started 10 years ago to launch a applied research project right within the city of Berlin, not far away from the Potsdamer Platz. And actually we attached to an old project, you can say, living lab project from the IBA, from the International Building Exhibition in 1987. And you can imagine it was a project actually launched when there was still a wall. And it was actually the first, you can say, circular neighborhood project in Berlin, and we were lucky that we could attach to this project, to this site right in the center of Berlin. And maybe I just go back when we started the project. I mean, we applied for a bigger call. Actually, it was the initial motivation was that the German Ministry of Research and Education launched a call asking for how can we transform our urban infrastructures, becoming more flexible, becoming more circular, and so on. So it was actually a water question raised there. And we came up, Anja and me, with our background in landscape design, urban design, and we came and sit together and talk to, we had a link to the TU Berlin and a link to the chair of urban design, Professor Million. And we asked her, can we apply with a project which asks actually what would happen if we start at the housing or at the neighborhood scale, asking how can we transform the water infrastructure on the housing or in the neighborhood, what would happen? And she said, yeah, just go for that, I will support that and set up a team, so to speak. And so we went on the journey and we wanted to actually raise the question of infrastructure change, of how can we invite the citizens to be part of that change? How can we produce water that at the end fresh fish can be caught in the river again? And of course, we wanted to talk about new products. And so when we came, and luckily we found this, or we knew this old IBA spot right in the center. And we asked actually when we applied, when we started to set up the team, a very diverse team, from urban design up to the technologists. And we started with the question, what would happen if we don't produce any wastewater anymore? What would happen if we produce instead of wastewater, fresh water, fresh nutrients and fresh food right in the middle, of the city? And here you see the kind of concept scheme. It's kind of a modular concept. And you see that we connected to that spot, which I already introduced, where they have a double pipe system. So they already, since 1987, they introduced a double pipe water system in the buildings, so that you can literally collect 70% of the wastewater, which is grey water. So everything which is not toilet water is grey water. You can collect separately, and they cleaned it up already since the 90s. They clean this water for being reused in the household for supplementing drinking water, for example, in the toilet flush. Yeah? And we asked, when we came there, we asked, can we use this water also for food production? Is it possible to actually link water recycling in the neighborhood with fresh food production via a water farm-based approach, via a lightweight farming approach? And here you see the site. You see that we are right in the courtyard of this neighborhood, and we set up this test greenhouse, you can say. We didn't start right up at the roof, because we had to stay at the ground to show if it is working, if we produce the right qualities, if the water qualities are good to raise fish. And what we also did, you see that here, we tried we initialized also the question of, can we use the toilet water, which has the most nutrients in the water? Can we actually take that water and transform it into a gold water? We later on called it gold water, urban fertilizer, which we can then use for hydroponic production. What we said, we saw that in your presentation, Jago, before. And so, you see this spot here. And maybe Anja now is telling you a little bit how this spot also, or this neighborhood transformed. We showed some images over the years, from 1987 to now. No, I have just another question, but we already heard that. We work with this, why is it called roof water farm? Roof is a synonym for building integrated farming and water farming for lightweight farming. But Jago already explained the big advantages of this approach. It's really space efficient. It's 10 times more productive per square meter, and it uses 90% less water compared to agriculture, to land-based conventional food production.
So as you can see, As you can see, we have a unique selling point. This is hydroponic farming with the use of surface water. So the focus is really showing the technology, or using the resources of the city. So our fishes swim in recycled grey water. This is Janine. It's, I think, 10 years old, this picture. We produced there. Fraunhofer is doing that still. Fertilizer. So we have gold water. I think that's a thing we need when we run hydroponic farming or greenhouses in that scale you showed us before. It's the biggest question, or one of the biggest questions, how we nourish the plants we grow there. And we have that resource within the city. And a big part of our stories since 10 years is the question of acceptance. When we started in 2013, the BMBF, it's a German ministry for research and science, they said nobody will accept your approach because you have to develop an infrastructure. And we said we will produce food. So we had to find a strategy to actually show that the acceptance is possible. So we decided for something which is possible there. We decided to open the door and to develop within the people, or with the people together, more research questions. And so since 2000, when we opened, So before we go to that questions, we can show you that this place, since years, is a place where people participate, and this is, I think, a big part of our story around vertical farming and roof water farm. So going back to history, in the 90s, the people were swimming there within that yard, because the place where we are actually is a living lab. You can see since 1990 how technology transformed within the city center. So in the first IBA in 1987, the grey water treatment plant was open space, and you could do things which are impossible today within the city center of Berlin. You could swim in a public yard. Here you can see that in 1994. We were still studying at that time. But you can see there the yard is doing much more than actually, it's open space planning, which is offering so many things. That's why we are showing that pictures around food production. Here you can see in 2000 there was a reconstruction of the grey water treatment plant because the water price was just too high. And then I will jump over that. Now we will come later to it. Yeah. And this is what you can see today there. There is a constructed wetland, which is not a grey water treatment plant now, but it's a rainwater actually site where the wetland is just evaporating the rainwater. And then in 2010, we came with a farm. So we have different modules there within the city center, which go much more than producing food. They do a lot of things for the city. When we came in 2013 with a greenhouse and that question of acceptance, that's why there was this long historical story, we did a lot of teaching and opened up the whole research process to just see what we will find. So what we did from the beginning, we used the greenhouse as a place for events. We opened up with an exhibition with the students together, just asking how we could scale up, and we offered food for sure. We invited all the neighbors to go with us to join our research process, and we opened with a strawberry celebration in 2014. And as you can see, it was completely crowded. We never expected so many people on that small yard over there. It was a day with stormy weather, but we had 300 visitors. And that process is actually running until today. So what you can see, the question of urban food production is really a question for everybody. And a lot of people have a lot of questions. So I think beside of all that architectural questions we have to solve, we have to talk about how this infrastructure is changing our daily life. And this is what you can see there, quite good. So we made a lot of events offering our products, and our products are really tasty.
So here it's actually just a picture showing our monitoring results, which were mainly made by the technology partners. I mean, Anja and me, we were in the role of coordinating, setting up the project, coordinating the whole thing, literally from the screw to the city, from the scale of a screw to the city. and of course working in the urban design application of our results. It was kind of a parallel process. But the technology results were very promising after 3 years. We could show actually that the products in terms of water, in terms of fertilizer, in terms of the food, were all safe, food safe. So before it was already sure that the recycled grey water was safe and had a hygienical standard great enough, much better than actually needed for becoming a drinking water, product or alternative, for flushing the toilets. But our research could actually show that we can use this water for much more values, for producing food. And that was a great, result, that we at the end we really could show that the concept we had on mind in the beginning was really working. And so we could show that in our test greenhouse. And also we could show, besides food farming, that we could also produce climate. A master thesis showed that the reed wetland, which nowadays is what Anja said, a rainwater sponge, not a grey water recycling plant anymore, but a rainwater sponge, is also a climate cooling system. And we could show that we can encourage the small water cycles in the city. And that's actually also a good result. And here you see the products from the water side, and you also see that the gold water is actually quite promising if you think of new built areas, if you think of urban densification, urban growth going on everywhere in the world. If you think of new urban neighborhoods, we should really consider also urban mining if we talk about edible landscapes in the new neighborhoods. And so we can show that it would work, It depends on the scale, of course, that it is also economically feasible, but instead of a wastewater treatment, we might think of nutrient reclaiming systems, production systems, which create circular values in the city. And our service water from the grey water, we can show it's almost drinking water quality. And drinking water is also food. We should think about that. That we can, if we substitute like 70% of our wastewater and turn it into drinking water, service water, which is not, where drinking water quality is not needed, we really save drinking water as food, and we save our landscapes, the natural landscapes who produce this drinking water. And of course, now what we did on the urban design field was, of course, looking if we could put the whole concept on the roof, literally, of the city. And we did a building study, and we could show that even in the existing structure, we could put up a rooftop greenhouse on top, and we could provide 80% of the demand, at least 80%. And I think Jago, he had the figures as well, that you can produce quite a lot of the supply you need every day in terms of leafy or fruity plants. And we could also show that if you even put the water management into the house, that we only need 0.1 square meter per person. So if you have, for example, we made a building study for a 70 people roof or existing house, we only need 7 square meters, to put in the whole water management. And of course, we also asked ourselves, and together with our team, what would happen if we catalyze this process and bring it into the neighborhood? What would happen then?
Just some fast questions, which maybe we can discuss later. Focusing that greenhouse typologies, we have to think about where all the resources are coming from. It's not just light and energy. It's actually nutrition, and so what we try to develop are kind of passports, a planning tool to change actually your view on the city. So as we had black water and grey water typologies, farming typologies, we were thinking about where the grey water is coming from, for instance, from a hotel. A hotel is producing a lot of grey water and has a restaurant, so it would make sense to install a farm there, or looking to another building. A commercial farm, you showed that images that such farms could locate somewhere where the people actually just work and where they produce Blackwater, there could be a spot to produce fertilizer. So what our idea was actually really to think in resource cycles, thinking about urban farming. And I think this is the next question when we know how we have to build it. And another question for us was, who's operating that farms? You said that the new farmers, the new urban gardeners are coming. I think questions like, how much can a family do by itself? Do we need the high-tech farmers, or can we work with children or schools to run that farms? All those operating models are completely open. We don't know. We have to test how they could be. And we try to develop some cards, some playing cards to step a bit into that operating models. We call that building passports, where you can calculate how many water you can actually harvest, how the building is, and what kind of food you would need just to play, to get in, to become an urban planner, actually. Or on the neighborhood level, network plans, where we try to have a look where the farms could be and who could run the farms and which products would cycle around the neighborhood. Some more pictures, what we do since 2018, we run the Roof Water Farm still as a learning site. So we discuss quite a lot who the new urban farmers, where they will come from. Do they come from the universities? Are they trained in water technology or in farming? Or are they sociologists? Where do they come from? Those questions come from all disciplines, and this we try to perform there actually. So as you can see, we do still harvest festivals. We have that productivity you showed. Actually, when we run the greenhouse, the salad is growing in 3 months.
1 month.
1 month, sorry. We can develop different products like melons and all that. At the moment, we have our lofa cucumber. And we went further to mobile solutions, which actually walk into the city.
Yeah, just a follow-up in terms of follow-up projects. On one side, we use our site today as a kind of incubator, as a learning site. You know, we come into contact with architects. We have so many different guiding tours. So we connect with housing associations and are in the process of developing projects. So maybe we somehow come together, you know, after this forum and discussing, you know, the bigger rollout. But what we also do is kind of following a mobile approach, a fast approach, how to bring that into the city. Because you can imagine in the existing city, it's kind of, yeah, if you talk about grey water recycling, of course it doesn't make sense to go to a house where there is the piping set up fixed, yeah, and there's no need for renovation. But if you go to other places, like to public parks and gardens, you might find places where it's easier to harvest the grey water. And so we went to the Beach 61. It's a beach volleyball site in the Gleisdreieck Park. It's a project, a follow-up project connected to Gartenleistung. It's about ecosystem services in the city. And yeah, I run this, our team runs a living lab for mobile blue-green infrastructures. And we installed the same approach at a sports ground, you can say. Harvesting shower water, cleaning it up and producing salad. And here is the concept design. So the mobile approach is to show that it's actually also generating multiple ecosystem services. We substitute fresh water, we produce local food, we offer also with the local food biodiversity. You know, we can work with old cultural seeds, for example. And we also have a mobile wetland to produce also a fresh climate, but just with a mobile, you know, wetland system. So, we actually connected it to student prototyping workshops. We developed this farm luckily in the before Corona in the winter. We built this together with a student group, a co-design process. We developed this vertical farm. So it's, in this case, it's kind of it's not a greenhouse, it's an outdoor vertical farm, the first outdoor hydroponic farm in Berlin. And so we set that up. Luckily, in summer in 2020, in the Corona year, we had grey water, so the sports grounds were open again, so we could also start to generate fresh water for irrigation. And yeah, we had there was a big resonance about this approach. People liked it. And we could actually show for Berlin, talking about edible cities, we could show that we could actually produce salad, on the example of salad production that we have on our little 2 square meter vertical farm, we can produce salad for 30 people, which would mean that for Berlin we only need 30 soccer fields. Instead of, and it's like 30 times less than we would produce it on the, on a acre, you say, on an open land. And so it has quite a potential for the city to kind of multiply it. And now, I think we have 5 minutes left, but we are almost done. So we also work with schools now with this mobile approach. It's interesting to see how the students or the pupils at school, first they are not kind of fond of working with plans, but we launched a workshop series and they won a prize last summer for sustainable campus development, and now they are really proud of what they did. And we continue working with schools because, of course, these are the future generation where we must bring these kind of concepts in. And that's our outlook now. Anja will talk about what we do on the campus of TU Berlin now, where we also try to multiply a couple of these themes.
So taking all that experience from the last 10 years, we went actually back to the Technical University and said, okay, now we have a look at our own campus and show the technologies. We discuss about operating models, and we do that together with the city. In Berlin, it's a district, Charlottenburg-Wilmersdorf. So Climatehood actually is a transdisciplinary approach to bring all that solutions to our own campus at the Technical University, and together with the district Charlottenburg-Wilmersdorf to open spaces in Berlin. So in Berlin in summertime it's getting quite hot. We lose our open spaces because we don't know how to actually take care about the trees and all the grass we have, so we have to start something new, and we try to develop that together with the district within Climatehood, and we apply all those modular technologies we showed you, which we have developed over the last 10 years. So it's a lot about hydroponic farming there for sure, but we also will try to develop new approaches within rainwater technology or grey water technology. We will see where we will go in the next year. So we try to do a sum up looking to roof water farm and to the Stadtmanufaktur. So what we learned, we need that long-term processes. The roof water farm is a site where you can learn since 1987 how technology transforms the neighborhood, and that we have to test, that we have to trial, that we really have to actually go into the daily dimensions of that technology, and this you can see there. We will fail, we know, and we have to make better. So we need the long-term view, and we need the co-production processes, and that's why the Stadtmanufaktur, is developing. And what we develop at the moment is process knowledge. We develop operation models. We don't know where we will go there. We both are landscape architects, but I'm sure that the whole foodscapes will be completely diverse. It's not clear that the gardener will take over. Maybe different people is, I think, the bigger question. So from that point, we develop new knowledge, and this knowledge is integrated. It's in between the disciplines we know. And for that, we need that experimental spaces and testing fields to see where we will go. We are in a transformation phase, and we will have to create new alliances for that knowledge and that technologies which are different than the ones we know. This is, I think, what we've learned in the last years. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Grit and Anja, for this introduction about your work. I'm very delighted to introduce you now to our next speakers. This time there are 3 people. Each time we have an input, one person more comes on stage in this panel. Vanessa Giolai studied architecture at the TU Vienna and at the Lenza Paris Val de Seine. Her master thesis, Mapping Urban Food, was part of the research project Food Atlas Vienna. Next to her research activities concerning food urbanism, she's working in the Viennese architectural office Super Wien that focuses on urban design. Furthermore, she was also active in teaching when she did an architectural design studio named Decoding Food System at the TU Wien together with Angelika Psenner and Daniel Löschenbrand, which we're also going to hear about a little today. Daniel Löschenbrand studied architecture at the TU Vienna and at the Bauhaus Universität in Weimar. Besides his practical architectural work, where he works on the reconstruction and reuse of buildings, he's currently a PhD candidate at the Institute of Urban Design at TU Wien. His research interest is related to the ground floor zone, urban metabolism, and food urbanism. Together with Vanessa Giolai and Angelika Psenner, he's working on the research project Food Atlas Vienna. In addition, he has been teaching at the TU Wien for 2 years. And Andreas Gugumuck studied business informatics at the Technical University of Vienna and worked for almost 10 years in the IT industry. Then he stumbled upon the former tradition of eating snails in Vienna, and it was clear he had found the long-sought alternative for his family's farm. In 2008, he started as a part-time farmer with extensive outdoor cultivation of snails and built up the Wiener Schnecke brand. He was followed by a rapid establishment in top gastronomy and enormous media response. In 2010, Andreas gave up his job as IT manager and took over his family's Gugumuck farm. In 2014, he founded the Wiener Schneckenmanufaktur. In 2018, he founded the association Zukunftsraum, and in 2019, the cooperative Zukunftshof, a lighthouse project for urban food production and a meeting place for neighborhoods, arts and culture in the south of Vienna, to be exact, in Rot-Neusiedl. Welcome on stage.
Thank you very much. Hello again. We eat 5 times a day. We think about food more than 200 times per day. And we, as modern city dwellers, we eat most of the time outside our home. We eat our meals on their way, at work, on the road, in the parking lot, while waiting in between, in the canteen or in restaurants. Maybe you had your first coffee in the morning at home or on the way to come here, or you grabbed something at the entrance. But yeah, the topic of food permeates our everyday lives in a very specific way, on a very personal and individual level. And if you delve deeper into the question of where our food comes from, supplying entire city populations with full supermarkets every day, connections but also gaps become visible, and many more questions arise. Some of these questions we would like to discuss today with you in the context of this event. How we household together, care for ourselves, or are part of a care system. We are very happy to be here today and share our project Food Atlas with you. The questions of how cities are fed has been on our minds for some time now. And with our project, we try to understand how food is shaping our cities and our daily life. Having both a background in architecture and urban planning, we quickly realized that the world we live in is strongly permeated by food. And once you put on this lens of food, be sure you never get rid of it. I just jumped a few slides. But at Modern City Dwellers, we have more or less lost touch with food, its production, its processing, and all the other processes involved. The production of food is more or less invisible for us living in cities. Our primary access to food takes place in a supermarket, in plastic packaging, and categorized with barcodes. And we sometimes need to remember that food comes from living things that come from nature. It is almost impossible to see how the ingredients of our dinner end up on our plates. In contrast to pre-industrial times, production no longer takes place in the same place as consumption. This results in complex interrelationships and detachment from the local context. The former coexistence of food supply and the city has now dissolved and been replaced by modern transportation, storage, and delivery facilities. To understand the close interconnection between food supply and space, it is worth taking a look at the past. We've changed nature through fire and transformed space into settlements and spaces that fed these settlements. And how to feed these settlements was always an issue. But we created these modified natural landscapes that produced the food which the city consumed. And therefore, the city and its hinterland were strongly interwoven and the relationship was clearly defined. What is very interesting here is that cities were part of this organic cycle. Agriculture and urbanism happened at the same time, more or less. And the consequence was that the ability to supply the city with food was the single and most important control to urban growth in pre-industrial societies. And as already mentioned, industrialization changed everything. Vienna's population is growing enormously, and at the same time, larger quantities of food are being transported into the city. This picture shows the annual food consumption of Vienna in 1901. We can see more than 1 million animals coming towards and entering the city alive by walking. To walk, for example, to the Rinderhalle St. Mark's or any other marketplace where they were sold or slaughtered and then cooked. Pretty much visible in public, also a subtle difference to today. But the goods trains in the background also demonstrate that supply chains changed significantly with the help of the railways and the industrialization. Today, we can live like this in the city because most of the food supply takes place elsewhere from people who are working elsewhere. In this regard, what we eat still has a major impact on the way our cities look. The two elementary aspects in this question are food and space. We think of us as urban, but the fact that we need to eat in order to survive shows that we are still very dependent on nature. Carolyn Steele, a leading researcher in the topic of food and urbanism, describes this as the urban paradox. Food shapes our everyday lives. This becomes noticeable in the equipment of a person's kitchen, with certain eating habits to larger urban configurations. Our research focuses on multiple levels of scale, from personal living space, like the apartment, to neighborhoods and districts, to the city as a whole. But how are the different scales connected to food? How do people inhabit their food spaces, and how do they organize, and how do they care? One of our first approaches was to understand the city as a holistic organism, into which resources flow, are exploited, and products and waste products go out. Of course, it's not that easy. And when we talk about feeding a city, we're talking about a variety of linked topics. We talk just as much about water, energy, biodiversity, raw materials, social activities, community, and in the end, care. Cities are not only places that need to be supplied. They are still places of production and distribution. The subtle difference is that these places more or less have been pushed further and further to the edge over time, due to better transportation infrastructure and logistics. For example, the wholesale market of Vienna, originally located at the Naschmarkt in a very central area of the city, moved to the outskirts of the city in the south of Vienna. Now logistically easily accessible via the highway. and also vegetables from the Tulnefeld reach the city's markets via the Danube Canal, a former indispensable supply route of the city. Today, it is mostly the street signs that remind us of former food places, like the Fischerstiege or Salzgries in the central districts of Vienna. But if one tries to understand today's cities in their metabolism, one must also think about the marginalized or externalized places that serve our needs, meaning the glasshouse landscapes in Spain or Italy, farms in Poland or ranches in Argentina. This is a key issue to understand. Where are the places of today's food system? Where are the still local food places, and what spaces are occupied? To bring us closer to this topic on a spatial level, we made a simple comparison. A person needs a certain amount of land to feed himself. From a study of Bürgow, the University of Applied of Natural Resources and Life Sciences, we could find numerical values of diets and land consumptions of a person. We took a look at Vienna, and accordingly, a vegan Viennese population could almost feed itself from the Machfeld, a 1,000-hectare big agricultural area. With a vegetarian or average diet, consumption is almost 2 to 3 times as high. Of course, this is a very generalized, but there is a clear connection of the spatial impact of our diet, and it demonstrates the link between required space to feed city populations. 2 years ago, we started the research project Food Atlas Wien at the Institute of Urban Design and Landscape Architecture at the TU here in Vienna. A project that tries to identify the connections and correlations between food supply and urban environments. The first phase of the project was connected to an interactive exhibition in the frame of the Vienna Biennale. We toured Vienna and held public events in different locations in the city. The goal was to identify places and spaces that are connected to food supply. An important component was the activation of city residents and the creation of a knowledge hub on the topic. We used collective mapping as a tool for collaboration and data collection. What you see here in the picture is the final product of the first phase, a large map of Vienna with highlighted locations, comments, and inputs on food supply. These data were also linked to a digital map that we used and we programmed for the project for the participants as a mapping and documentation tool. Both processes took place in parallel and benefited from each other. 3 types of data were collected and then correlated: public geospatial data, research data, and subjective data from the participation process. And thanks to the exchange with the city's residents and experts, it was possible to draw a precise snapshot of the Viennese food landscape. And also the basis for the following phase of the project was laid, where Daniel will take over.
So to phase 2, Dorothy mentioned in the beginning, we were offered or got the opportunity to do a design studio at the TU Wien named Decoding Food Systems. And it was like the chance for us to expand this data, which we gained in the first phase, and moved it to the second phase in a more academia way. And I think you also mentioned, Dorothy, that also Angelica was part of the design or the teachers team. And you see, together with around 30 students, we wanted to get a complete picture of the Viennese food landscape. So we splitted the city area in single pieces and assigned them to the students, and then they were mapped and collecting data for us, with us. Did you mention the website?
Yeah, slightly bit.
Yeah. For the first phase, we also created a website with an online mapping tool, the tool which we also used for phase 2 now, just to have us, I think it was important for us to have a common working platform that all the students work with the same template, with the same gain of data to also compare the different approaches. Here you see status, working status of the process. In the end, there were around 2,500 points. The students were identified, analyzed, and mapped in our tool. It gives us a really good impression how much data is connected to the space of food in the city. You see here spots that are connected to food production, to food consumption, but also to the aspect of waste management and recycling. These were the two phases where we gained the data and created our database, which we are right now currently evaluating on and also doing our analysis. For our first conferences 2 years ago, I think, we also started to do the first graphics, as you can see here. We called it the food cycle, a more holistic view on specific topics, but it already is showing how our approach works, because we always look on all our three, let's say, categories: the production, the consumption, and the waste and recycling. Maybe showing our approach or our way to work a bit in a single category. We named it for now the supermarket metropolis, the way how we work in it. Maybe you already know that, or for the people who live in Vienna, they probably witness it. The city of Vienna has a really high density of supermarkets. Austria in general, but also Vienna have one in the highest in the European context. And if we compare it to another major German-speaking city like Hamburg, we can see that Hamburg has about 2/4 of the density of Vienna has. So a major thing also on the cityscape and on the urban fabric, and for us as planners then really interesting what correlations this density of supermarkets has on the ground floor zone or on other questions in the city in terms of energy, mobility, etc. And little extra thing, I can really recommend the magazine down there, the dossier, supermarket. It's a bit more economically based, but it's really interesting because also this high supermarket densities leads to high costs for the chains, which in turn leads to high prices for us as consumers. So similar products are cheaper in Germany than in Austria, for example. So if you want to get more detail on it, please check out this magazine. It's really interesting. But back to our topic, to the, let's say, more characteristic effects on the cityscape and on the urban fabric. It's also interesting for us to witness the correlations I already mentioned. If we speak about the way we use the city, we're used at around 7:30 or 8 p.m. The city of Vienna, all the supermarkets are closing. The mobility till 8 o'clock is really high. Afterwards, it is down. So we have this rhythm, this, let's say, daily uses and routines, which are shaped tremendously by the city and the supermarket densities. Also, for us, really also interesting if we walk through the cities of Vienna and the streets, and you more or less only find big bakery chains as well, which can economically survive next to this high density of supermarkets. So we're always looking for the small little bakeries. We were living abroad, but we don't find the small little bakeries. Like in other cities, they create or characterize the city streetscape, but in Vienna we more or less find the big players. For now, we did a little case study for the 8th district. I will be quick. A very dense district in terms of population, building density, and also supermarkets. And we see these clear principles about clustering the supermarkets to each other, but also clustering around the important public transport stations. And there are clear principles. And interestingly for us, you see the gray circles. They are around 300 meters, so it's like 5 minutes walking. That nearly every spot in the 8th district is covered with a 5 minutes radius to the next supermarket. It's not easy to calculate the real average time to walk to a supermarket, but we tried to do it in a very simplified way. We have around, let's say, 50,000 hectare build-up area. We have 8 turn supermarkets. We can divide it. We have a specific area space in it. Put this in a circle, get the radius, and we can claim that it's around 5 minutes average walking in Vienna to the next supermarket. If we go to the 8th district case study example again, it only takes us about 2.5 minutes to come to the next supermarket. If we say that Vienna would be Hamburg, and we take the density of the 2/4 I mentioned a minute ago, it would be 6 minutes walking only, but it would be like a tremendous reduce in terms of energy and other things. And this terms of energy, I wanted to address with this little mathematical play. We found some numbers. Please don't take them too serious, but just to give a little impression and dimensional feelings. We found a number that a square meter per year for a supermarket is around 400 kilowatt per hour in terms of electricity and gas. And if you also assume that average supermarket in this more dense context of the city has 500 square meters, we can come to a specific number of kilowatt hours per year for a supermarket. And we can compare it, for example, to the electricity demand of a single person in a private household. And we can say that the energy demand for a supermarket is equal to 100 people electricity demand. And if we do a little game now, and we halve the amount of supermarkets, for example, in the 8th district, we can say that we could save the electricity demand for 900 peoples. Just to give you a little impression of how density have correlations on energy and also on movement. But still, we can also witness that now we have some parts in the 8th district which are not covered inside this more or less 5 minutes walking distance. In the end, I have 2 minutes? Yes. Also, as a bridge then to Andreas, we wanted to give you 3 Viennese perspectives on the topic of a food-related city. First, the productive city. We want to take a look at the Simmeringer Heide, the circular city, and then to Andreas, the future city. Just a quick jump to the Simmeringer Heide, because we also showed us the example of Rotterdam. We have similar spaces in the south of Vienna at the Simmeringer Heide, a huge space or area of glasshouse structures or greenhouse structures. And because also you mentioned in the beginning the correlation between, or the historical narrative that the land around the cities is feeding the cities. And we also have heard curcuma, I think, twice today already. Vienna is also known as a curcuma capital. Why that? Because the city produces more curcuma than it consumes. So it can happen that if you move to Upper Austria and you buy a curcuma there, it's maybe from Vienna. Cucumbers, yeah. There are some else, I think onions and carrots, also the city produces more than it consumes. But maybe not, but curcumas is safe. Then the circular aspect, which you also have heard today quite a times. Just 3 quick examples, Manna Blün and the biogas plant in Simmering as well. These are always, when we worked on the topic, fascinating examples because it's not only a simple way or a one-dimensional way of food production, it is also a way that, for example, at the Manna factory, the waste heat from the production is fed in the district heating network, and I think it's about some more or less 100 households benefit from it. Also, the example of Blün, aquaponic company in the 22nd district of Vienna, is also showing that it's on a one-term production, but also with aquaponic they work really intensively on the principles of circular city, and they also have energy for the surrounding neighborhoods. And also, just to mention the aspect again that parts of our food waste becomes energy as well with the biogas plant. And I think, as a last sentence from us, this is where we see the big potential in our future questions of how food production or in general food will shape the city, that we understand the system as a more multi-layered system and not only a single dimension of production, but to correlate it with the consumption and also the waste and recycling management. And the last picture, Andreas, I want to give the word to you now.
Yes, thank you. My name is Andreas Gugumuck. My farm is here. I'm a snail breeder, so 5 minutes are a little bit hard for me to talk, but I will try. Yeah, and you see here the big farm here. There is a castle, and this old farm estate was built in the end of the 19th century, and it was always a pioneer of food production. They have also a patent of children milk, the dairy, and also in the 20th century it was one of the first organic farmer in Vienna in the 80s. And then after Chernobyl in the year 1986, the idea was born to produce organic food for the people in the city, and it was the first self-harvesting project here in this area. So they could feed 6,000 people in this area. Ja. Genau, ich habe noch eine Folie. Hast du die auch?
Nein, ich glaube nicht.
Also, okay.
Aber da kannst du pointen.
Also, cool.
Das meine ich.
So, no, jetzt habe ich mich verdruckt. Der Ohr, wo ist der? Schau, wenn man mir sowas gibt. Ah, na da, schau, da fühle ich mich wohl, genau, das ist meine Folie. Okay, this is other, yeah, you can see here, we are here in the city, yeah, so the drone was 100 meters in the height, but it was Corona, no airplane flight, so it was allowed. And you see here this old building, it's more beautiful, it's an, also for the architecture here, it was a big farm for 2 hectares land, and now this area is very soulful, very fertile soil, also one of the best fields we have in Austria, and this is also the last chance for Vienna for in this area 125 hectares for the next city, Neusiedl. It should be the home for 21,000 people, and our goal was to protect this old building, and with the knowledge that everything is already sold to construction companies, we built up a project, Zukunftshof, where we combined this old agriculture tradition here. Since 2,000 years, also the Romans produced here food for Bitoben or something else. And we want to show how to combine food production and construction in a new city. And we have now the chance to do it from the roots. Yeah? We have 125 hectares of land, and we have to protect this land with the greens, that we save areas for food production, but also open it for new kinds for vertical farming, farming on the roofs. Yeah? And yeah, this is the last chance for Vienna to do it, also to combine a future city with food production. And we have wonderful projects here from Holland and all over the world, and this is a wonderful project, and we can talk afterwards about some ideas from us, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much also for this talk. I'm also sorry that I was always quite strict about the time. Since we already started 15 minutes later, all the speakers were really just perfect in their time management. But since we only have half an hour now for our group panel, I want to introduce now our guest. Additional to our speakers, Bernhard Steger. Bernhard Steger is head of the Department of Urban District Planning and Zoning of the City of Vienna, also known as the EMMA 21A, since December 2018. He completed his architectural studies at the University of Technology and ETSA Barcelona, followed by a dissertation. He was teaching at TU Wien and was also partner in a Viennese architecture firm. Since 2012, he worked for the Viennese Deputy Mayor for Urban Development, Mobility, Climate Protection, Energy Planning, and Citizen Participation. Welcome on stage, and I also would ask all the other speakers to come on stage now and take a seat where your name shield is. That's a good information. I just heard from Bernhard. He can stay a little bit longer because I thought we only had 15 minutes now the chance to talk with him. So thank you again, all of you, for this really interesting inputs. I would like to start with you, Bernhard Steger, as a first response to these three inputs we just saw. What is the situation and also the position of urban food production in Vienna? We saw two examples of how to reintegrate food production into the urban fabric. Are similar projects planned in Vienna, or how could this reintegration of food supply into the city can be translated into the Viennese context?
Yeah, thank you very much. Welcome. Mahlzeit, we would say in the town hall at this daytime. Well, first of all, agriculture, urban agriculture has a big tradition in Vienna. I was asking the Agricultural Chamber of Vienna for some figures. And it was mentioned in the last talk that Vienna is the cucumber capital of Austria, which is true. We produce 217% of the cucumbers in Vienna, which needs Vienna itself. In fact, it's 63 square kilometers, which is dedicated to urban agricultural production in Vienna. That means that more than a third of the free and open spaces of the surface of Vienna is dedicated to urban agriculture. So what are we producing? Mainly two things. The first thing is vegetables. 73,000 tons of vegetables are produced within the city of Vienna every year, and we saw Simmeringer Heide, which is an important area for that. And another thing is wine. So last year we had 2.5 million liters of wine which was produced within the city, and I was told that there is not another capital within Europe which produces such amounts within its city borders. Yeah, and of course we produce nails. One farmer produced nails. Addition to that, and we just, it is not adopted yet, but we are already finished the so-called agricultural structural plan for Vienna, which is making beside of the Stadtentwicklungsplan every 10 years. And so within the next, we do not plan to reduce the surface, the areas in Vienna, which is dedicated to agriculture in amount of the numbers in the next 10 years. So this has a high priority within the city, and we want to keep it and for production, but also for it shapes the landscape, especially the wine. So if you look on the western hills of Vienna, the wine shapes the landscapes, and it's part of the Viennese culture of living. Just mentioned the Heuriger or all this stuff. Nevertheless, I think we have to discuss the question of food production not only within the city borders, but also within the metropolitan area. So, because the city boundary is just an administrational border, so there's no difference if it's the Machfeld within the city or outside of the city. Coming to the question of you, we just heard from Andreas Gugumuck, so at the Zukunftshof in Rotneusiedl. We know that there is especially in the south, there a big tradition of food production, and we are now in the phase of competition for this city development of Rotneusiedl. And before, so in preparation of the competition, we developed a program for that area, and we made the so-called Rotneusiedl Charter with 9 points, and one of the points is that we want to we want to integrate agricultural production in this city, in this new city quarter of this 125 hectares. And the Zukunftshof, which Andreas Gugumuck showed you in a few slides, is a nucleus for this, and will have a very important role within that.
Thank you. very much. You already kind of went into my second question I had prepared for you. First of all, from hearing what you said about the agricultural plan, about that you want to keep the amount of agricultural fields that are currently inside of Vienna is promising. But on the other hand, the city of Vienna is growing. This September, Vienna has exceeded the 2 million inhabitants mark. Due to this rising number of people, there's a lot of pressure on unbuilt land inside of the city. Also, you already mentioned Rot-Neusiedl. At the same time, the advancing climate crisis heats up the discussion about soil consumption and soil sealing, and also on the safety and food production. Despite the urgency to react, many existing green and farmland areas are still converted into building land, like Rot-Neusiedl, where you mentioned it's 125 hectares of fertile farmland, which is about to be turned into a new development area. You mentioned that, or like currently there was the urban competition. The first round was finished right now, and that there are points of including urban food production into this area. We also heard from Andreas Gugumuck that the aim of the Zukunftshof is really to be this, actually the impulse, the place of impulse where this starts from. In a way, maybe referring also to the projects which we heard, where we really saw how we can integrate urban food production, like on existing buildings or on the roof on buildings, or really integrating it into the residential neighborhoods and using everything there is as a resource from the wastewater. What is like? Is this are these projects? Could this be like a guiding principle for the urban development of Vienna, also concerning the Rot-Neusiedl?
As you mentioned, Vienna turned to 2 million this September, at least statistically. Maybe it was also already in August or in June. But in the 1990s, after the fall of the Iron Curtain and when Austria joined the European Union, Vienna was thinking about where could be additional new areas for city development, and we still are within these borders, and we won't leave it until, as we say today, or as we see today, until 235 or 250. So that means that also in the future, 50% of the area of Vienna will remain green and open spaces or water spaces. And more of these 500,000 people since 1990, more than 60% of these people live within the already existing area then. And the other parts are the conversion areas, like the big station areas like Hauptbahnhof or Nordbahnhof, and of course also the city development areas around Vienna. But I think the main strategy, how to focus, you're absolutely right, mentioning in the beginning, what is efficiency. I think city is dedicated to efficiency, and in efficiency in many ways. Efficiency in land use. I think the European way of the dense city is one of the most important things how to save land. Another number in Vienna, we have less than 10% of the land used per person than, for example, in Lower Austria, in Burgenland. So therefore, efficiency in land use, but also, and now I leave the area of an urban planner, also is efficiency in food use. I just read a few weeks ago, there was in the newspaper about the food use in the hospitals in Austria. And around 20,000 tons of food, of good food, is wasted alone in the hospitals in Austria because it seems to be quite difficult to organize this in another way. This is it has the value of 110 million euros. So this is exactly the amount all the agriculture in Vienna is producing every year. So this is another thing, and the third thing is efficiency in producing. We heard it in the first lecture that there is a lot of possibility how to bring more efficiency in that. And just another number, 2% of the surface of Lower Austria is dedicated to very inefficient biofuels. And if we use this for production of food to eat and produce the energy through much more efficient production methods like wind or photovoltaic or sun, there will be a lot of land to find for this.
Thank you very much for the insights of Vienna. I want to go forward to Jago. The Agrotopia is a pioneering testing site for urban food production, especially in the sense of mixture and densification within the existing city. It reminded me a lot of a project launched by the IBA 27 in Stuttgart named Agriculture Meets Manufacturing, where they try to connect the two producing spheres, agriculture and industry. And these are actually two functions that geographically lie quite close to each other, because always at the edge of the populated city due to their large land consumptions. But these two functions normally don't interact and are treated as they're not incompatible. But I have the feeling the project Agrotopia is like already the built example of how industry and agriculture could work together in a symbiotic way. So from the point of view of your project Agrotopia, but also of the expertise of your office, we saw you're working on quite intensively on that field. I'm really interested in how do you see the future of urban food spaces?
Well, what I showed is for me the daring clients that are building the future. So the examples I show are in most of the cases pilots or demos, but they give a taste of what is possible in the future in terms of technology, efficiency, but also in terms of location and integration with other city functions. So I hope, let's say, my presentation gave a couple of examples of what it could look like and how it could be organized. But I think this is just the beginning. Let's say there's I think if I hear you, Bernhard, about how the city is ambitiously tweaking and working on to find the right places for food, and also raising
important questions like food waste. You're acting on different fields. I was wondering, let's say, in what level you are also teaming up with the Department of Health, Public Health, in changing the menus. We just discussed this before this presentations. Let's say the World Wildlife Fund announced the menu of the future, and take a grab on your seat, it's only 120 grams of white meat a week. Yeah, they took both the most radical planet-proof approach and the most radical health approach and combined it. And this is quite a good organization, I would say, the World Wildlife Fund, very reasonable, and said, okay, this is it. If we want to stay here, we have to reduce our meat consumption. In other words, plant-based is going to be of an enormous importance. So what we have on our plate, and then I'm talking about the future, what we will have on the plate on the future will, be also the program for the landscapes and architecture of the future. The good news about it is that the last diagrams show that we have an enormous reduction then of land use. So I think this strategic position that you as a city can take, because you can take your inhabitants in together and say, okay, what do we want to eat? Or how are we going to eat? And then, how are we going to organize the world around us in such a way that we can accommodate that new diet, that new menu? I think there's an incredible opportunity and also responsibility from the public realm and the city to do so. And I think from there we can, as architects, give architects the opportunity, and they come up with the best solutions to translate it into architecture. Yeah, but I think this crucial position, like what is the future? It starts at the plate, and let's say our choices as consumers.
Yes.
Unexpected answer, maybe, sorry.
No, thank you very much that you also took the opportunity to refer to the city of Vienna. And as we heard, I mean, there's this huge development project right now where there's a lot of opportunity to integrate these thoughts. And also Vanessa and Daniel showed it in their presentation already, what impact the way, or like what we eat has on land, on energy, on the climate.
I'm actually very curious how these snails perform in this new diet. I'm sure you can explain a lot of it, but maybe after or now.
4 times more protein than beef.
Okay.
Less land, less water, less food.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
very
we have
good
to,
news.
yeah.
These are the, let's say, these are the ingredients for
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah.
Mushrooms also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, let's say, well, if you come to Rotterdam, I know a place, a restaurant where they cook their mushrooms. It's actually a Surinamian place, so very spicy, etc. But it's better than meat. It's more tastier. It's you feel better immediately. These kind of things are that we make rooms for snails and mushrooms and etc. in the future of our city.
Thank
very
you.
difficult on the field of a political discussion how the Veggie Day in Germany shows.
What happened on the Veggie?
There was a proposal about a Veggie Day, so one day per week without eating meat, and this costs the Greens in Germany a few percent at the past elections.
Yeah, and it was a disaster. I would want to go on with Grit and Anja. I really must say that the Roof Water Farm is an extraordinary example of how a climate-positive, edible, water-conserving urban development could and also should look like. What really amazed me was how this is actually, these ideas can be implemented right in the heart of cities. You already showed us some of your follow-up projects and that you also are working and testing on mobile services and also expanding it on whole neighborhoods. But how can your ideas could be implemented in the large scale? What is missing currently in terms of policy, technical requirements and financing?
Thanks for that question. I think actually nothing is missing. I think we are on the way. I'm saying that because sure there are some answers we offer. They blur the regulations we have. Once you start to integrate surface water into farming, we are within the regulation systems from the old times. So there actually, that's why we are talking about living labs, about actually new fields we develop. This is one point. For instance, if you run such a farm with surface water, you have to develop a monitoring system, and once you want to scale that up into a neighborhood, we work with people who don't know how to do that. So that's why we need to go step by step. And for me, this is a big question to that efficiency question. How slow or fast can we do that with the people? And the scaling up we do, that's why I think we become mobile, is actually on different ways. We focus the new knowledge we have, the knowledge production we need for that actually daily process of producing food in different operating models. This is, I think the roof water farm is actually on many points just changing the idea of how we produce and who is producing food within the city. It's not the industrial scale on every level. We have much more possibilities. And I think the question we address is how many possibilities do we have to become fast? So it's not efficiency, it's diversity we actually address. This is maybe the point where we are and where we scale.
Yeah, maybe just to add in terms of the operation models, I mean, we show that we can work on these kind of cooperative models. For example, with the beach farm, we now, the research phase is over, we could actually show that the mobile approach is working. I mean, we produce a water quality which meets the standards. So in terms of surface water, we are actually on the safe side. We can show that we have at least the irrigation standard needed for food production. It's even better. And now we turned into a new phase with the beach farm. The operators, it's a team. They overtook the farm. They kind of were, how to say, risky enough to work with us, you know, to try this experiment on the sports ground, producing edible food out of shower water. And now it worked, and now they took it over, and we have a kind of cooperative model working on, or going on, as a cooperation between Roof Water Farm, a student startup which has founded as a spin-off, Hydro Tower, it's a young startup which actually does the operation, helps with the operation together with our Roof Water Farm Living Lab, and the beach farm or the beach volleyball operators. They harvest and they serve the food, you know, on the bistro. So that's kind of a nice story, I would say. And what Anja said, I think the next step is really that we kind of foster the strategic urban development, that we have regulations in terms of new buildings or new neighborhoods, that we have circular principles. In Berlin, there is no regulation that says we have to recycle our water in the neighborhood, even though Berlin faces a major water crisis issues. It's not communicated yet in the broader public, but we will face a major crisis. And if we continue to work the same way, if we densify, if we grow, if we build on pristine land, it won't work out, I would say. We really have to find new strategies. I think there must be a strategy which really uses abandoned spaces, sealed spaces, and we have to develop them first before we go on, at least in Berlin, before we go on pristine land. We should avoid that, I would say, and look for new other strategies.
One small thing I want to add, and I think what is missing, that we actually combine the crisis elements, that we combine the sponge city with food production, and that we learn to actually that the concepts go through the disciplines and through the knowledge we have. I think this is the way to save space, and this is the way to bring water to farming, and this is the way to bring the farming to the people, the schools and the kindergartens. We have to step out of our silos we are still in the terms of food production.
Thank you very much for these insights. Now, my last question to Vanessa and Daniel. Thank you very much for the presentation on your impressive research of the Food Atlas Vienna. You just showed us a brief overview what you worked on over the last few years and only some insights of your findings, and I'm sure you could have talked 10 times longer if you would have presented all of your findings. Maybe what are the next steps in your food research? Are there new emerging topics you want to investigate, or are any cooperations planned? And another question are, as experts on the Viennese food spaces and systems, you have a lot of knowledge of what is working well and where there's space of improvement. Do you have a suggestion of what each of us can do to influence food supply in a positive way here in Vienna?
I think the answer was already mentioned. Eat less beef. No, and eat more snails, yeah. No, but it's really the question that also probably was for us crucial to understand that everything we eat or drink also is connected to space, and it needs space. We don't, well, let's say it like this, we don't grow up with this knowledge of how many space is required for something we eat or we drink. How can we? It's a question which we can't answer, or answer quite probably, but I think that's also the approach and maybe also a perspective on where our research is going, to make it more, this educational part, to make it more transportable. Food has a major impact because everyone can speak on food. We often have the problem if you speak in our urban bubbles that other people won't understand what you're talking about. But what we've witnessed with our public events, food is a topic where everyone can participate and have an opinion on. And I think that is also the major drive we have and the possibility to communicate with a wide part of the society to change in terms of water uses or any other topics or space uses. And so I think the message will be how can we put more knowledge in a transportable way in formats that also the broad population can change things. That's like more the way I want to use it this way, our research.
I think what every one of us can do is be part of this common knowledge, because we don't have it yet, about the knowledge about food, how it is connected to us, our personal lifestyle, different lifestyles, but also the way we live and how we inhabit spaces in cities, but also in the countryside. And yeah, build up this common knowledge, and also, like Jago said, that in planning practices, for example, that or also on not with planning background, that just give people the space they would need for such projects like the Zukunftshof or any other projects that involve food, water, like your water project. Yeah.
And I think another layer which we haven't talked right now so far is the social layer. We have to talk about what is affordable for us in terms of food. If we speak about food projects like food co-ops or any other alternative models, right now they are more in a, let's say, hipster Bobesque bubble. We also have to find translations for wider areas again. And the second layer, speaking of a social question, I'm always questioning myself, or maybe you have a better answer also, how we will live in 20 or 30 years and how our society will work then. How much work will we put on our normal, regular work in offices or anywhere else? And maybe how much work do we have left for other things, like common uses or common faces? So I think this social question is a big, big part in this room, let's say, which also should address in close future, let's say.
Thank you for these suggestions. I would like to open up the panel discussion now to the audience. We have a lot of experts on food and eating sitting here. Does maybe anybody of you have a question, a thought, a comment, what they want to share with us? Is there a microphone? Or should we? Yeah. Kurt and Julia, I saw. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm extremely impressed by the projects. When you talked about the roof water farm, I was wondering, in one of your slides you also showed what is so nicely called cold water use and black water use. Do you also have experience with the hygienical standards of using them? Because we had a project in Vienna, also in our recently finished IBA, they could not get permission to use that for public production. Even with the Goldwater nice toilet we had outside, and it wasn't allowed to really use that product.
Of course, it was one of the major questions, but we, in our funded research phase from 2013 to 2016, and there was the whole technology group was actually working on these kind of standards. And I mean, for the grey water, there was already a standard. So, for example, in Germany, if you want to install a grey water recycling system, you have to meet and use the service water out of grey water. You have to meet at least the EU bathing water quality standard. And of course, there are a couple more standards. And that's a setup which is already there. We could link to that. And in terms of roof water farm, in terms of food production, of course, we went a step forward. We worked together with an environmental medicine, environmental medicina doctor, who also developed this hygienical guidelines in the 90s at this site and the standards, so to speak. And we developed it further for food production. And for example, we had to check, for example, in the grey water, if there are certain pharmaceuticals, diclofenac as an example, a lotion, or if you have like 10 sites in the wash from the dishwasher, for example. These kind of indicators, they were actually screened, and we published that. So there is even an extra publication on the hygienic side from this team. And so at the end, we have standards in terms of using the service water also for food production. We could say it's safe. So, and we can work with that. That's actually a good step. I mean, that's, I think, now a good step to go further, even in rolling out this approach. And for the gold water is a kind of, we have to, I think, it's a bigger step, I would say, because when we think of new neighborhoods and producing gold water, instead of sending the black water, if you have double pipe systems, send it to a sewage treatment plant, producing Goldwater. We have the good results that it also meets the hygienic standards. Of course, we checked much more heavy stuff, so to speak, in the water, like pharmaceuticals, and the most from the community are in the black water, of course. But it's actually less dangerous, so to speak, compared to reusing wastewater from a mixed stream. If you have, for example, hospital wastewater in the mixed stream, it would be much harder and you wouldn't know what to look for. So if you have a kind of watershed which is only from a community, it's much safer, to think about recycling of gold, about urban mining, about Goldwater production, for urban farming. And so we have that good results. We could show that it works, but we need to look for the good scale, that it becomes also a part of, the circular, what Anja mentioned, the circular network in the neighborhood, circular economy in a new neighborhood. But Fraunhofer Umsicht, who were our partners in terms of the Goldwater or of liquid fertilizer production, they further work with that approach. So, yeah.
There was another question at Julia, I think.
If there is still time, I don't know.
We have to look, but I would like, you should, I think there was 3 statements, and then
we'll keep it short.
We'll end
I'm extremely expressed by the curation of this panel and how the different perspectives fit together and build up a whole. And I have a question. I would like to come back to you, Jago. Listening to Anja and Grit talking about the question of diversity and participation in these projects, and you work on it, as it seemed to me, on a different scale, but you are also considering these ideas of implementing the greenhouse projects into some bigger housing complexes and like parts of the cities. And you said that the clients were building the future, if I got you right before. And I was wondering, how is your experience in these processes, together with the clients, discussing the aspects that Anja and Grit dealing with, the aspects of diversity, of integrating people into the project and kind of stepping out of the silo of food production, as Anja said?
Yeah, thank you. It's a matter of progressive insights. The tower that is now under construction, which I showed you, the family scraper, the Maasbode, during the process we decided it will be a family tower with good gardens around it, which is quite unusual for high-rise. And then we sort of by itself came to the topic of, how you live in a row house and then you have your back garden where the children play, can go around, and why would it be great? Why it would be great to have also a bit of food growing there. So then we came to the vegetation of fruit trees and nut trees. So it's a progressive insight that you do along the, let's say, the involvement of the project. This same client watched us, let's say, on a presentation of our initial research for integrating vertical farms in a greenhouse, and he thought, you should have been a few years earlier, because that is actually also what I would like to have in this tower. So it's a matter of progressive insights. New techniques open up new perspectives on what would be possible. And even for commercial developers, it becomes interesting because it could be, another service that could be added to the housing project, making, of course, in terms of commercial housing, a business case or a more interesting business case, but also, let's say, gives a more durable society or a durable community inhabiting your building. So if you create common problems to keep the trees healthy and maintaining facilities within the housing complex, it also creates a more stronger community. So also from developers' point of view, it becomes interesting parts for development, the food elements. So it's progressive insights that take us step by step further.
We have to look a little bit on the time. There was one last statement from Andreas Gugumuck, and after that I want to close the panel.
It's not just a statement, it's a wish. We are on an exhibition for Rot-Neusiedl, and I wished all 4 finalists could stay here and watch your wonderful concept. Maybe it's possible to get the presentations from you and to send it to finalists? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
No, and thank you. Just a statement of thank you for putting the panel together, because I think it's really incredible, right on a right spot in time, kind of to open up this discussion and integrate it, because all this proposal can be integrated in this new development. But I think it's also important what we just heard. We need to also work on the regulations to make it possible. Because I also know a project in Geneva that was in that direction going, what Anja and Grit showed, kind of, and we have to allow these kind of projects. At the moment, the regulations probably will not allow them. And I think there we have to work on to get it really going. Thanks.
Thank you, Ute, for the last statement. With that, I want to say thank you to all the speakers and the valuable input. We can continue now the discussion about food production and the future of our cities, of our edible cities, now informally. There will be a break now until 1:30, where the panel 2 at one table, eating as an eco-social living practice, will take place. Thank you very much on my behalf. Enjoy the break and Mahlzeit.